The morning sun shone over the small town of Oak Ridge, Ohio. People went about their day as usual. Kids waited for school buses. Adults drove to work. No one expected anything strange to happen. At 9:17 a.m., the sky changed. Giant dark shapes appeared above the clouds. They were huge round ships, bigger than football stadiums. They hovered silently over major cities across the world. One floated above Columbus, casting a shadow over thousands of frightened people. Dr. Allison Wright was drinking coffee in her office at NASA when her phone rang. She picked it up and heard her boss's panicked voice. "Allison, get to the command center now. We have a situation." She ran down the hallway, her heart beating fast. In the command center, dozens of scientists stared at screens showing the massive ships. "What are they?" she asked. Her boss pointed to a screen with strange symbols moving across it. "They're sending a message. We need you to help figure it out." Allison was the best xenobiologist at NASA. She had spent years studying how alien life might communicate. Now she was facing the real thing. 2,000 miles away in Montana, John Carter was hiking through the woods with his rifle. The former Marine had left city life behind years ago. He preferred the quiet mountains and the simple life of hunting and fishing. John stopped when he heard a strange humming sound. He looked up and saw a dark shape moving through the clouds. It was much bigger than any airplane he had ever seen. "That's not ours," he whispered to himself. His military instincts kicked in immediately. He turned and started running back to his cabin. At the Pentagon, officials scrambled to understand what was happening. The president called an emergency meeting. Military bases across the country went on high alert. Dr. Wright worked quickly with her team to decode the alien message. After 20 minutes, their computers started translating the strange symbols. "I've got something," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Everyone gathered around her screen. The message was simple and terrifying. "Attention, primitive inhabitants of this world. We are the Veldorian Empire. Your planet has been selected for colonization due to its suitable atmosphere and resources. Your species has been classified as pre-space fauna. You will surrender all territories within 3 Earth hours. Resistance is inadvisable but will be met with standard extinction protocols. This message will not be repeated." Silence filled the room. Then everyone started talking at once. "They think we're animals," one scientist said. "Pre-space fauna. They don't know we've been to the moon," another asked. Dr. Wright studied more incoming data. "They seem to be scanning our cities, but they're ignoring our military bases and satellites. I don't think they know how advanced we really are." In Montana, John Carter reached his cabin and turned on his old TV. The emergency broadcast system was active on every channel. He listened to the news about the alien ships and their threat. John went to his closet and pulled out a large metal box. Inside was his old Marine equipment, kept in perfect condition. He started putting on his gear. "If they want to fight, they'll get one," he muttered. Back at NASA, Dr. Wright identified the alien commander from their transmissions. He called himself Supreme Conqueror Zixtal. He seemed absolutely confident in his victory. "The Veldorians have made a big mistake," Dr. Wright told her colleagues. "They've given us 3 hours to prepare." Around the world, people reacted to the news with fear and determination. Military forces mobilized. Scientists gathered data. Regular people prepared to defend their homes. The clock was ticking. Humanity had 3 hours to prove they were not easy prey. In his ship above Earth, Supreme Conqueror Zixtal watched the small planet with satisfaction. According to his outdated information, these primitive beings could barely fly, let alone fight back. This would be the easiest conquest of his career. He had no idea how wrong he was. General Patricia Dawson stood in the underground command center of the Pentagon. Large screens showed the alien ships hovering over major cities around the world. She had been in the military for 30 years, but nothing had prepared her for this day. "What are our options?" she asked the room full of military leaders. A young officer stepped forward. "Ma'am, Lieutenant Eric Summers reporting. Our F-35s can reach the ships in minutes. We can test their defenses. General Dawson nodded. Make it happen, Lieutenant. But tell your pilots to be careful. We need information more than heroics right now. Lieutenant Summers saluted and left to brief his pilots. He had been flying experimental aircraft for years, but today would be the biggest test of his skills. At NASA headquarters, a young engineer named Kevin Barnes noticed something odd about the alien ships. He had been studying the energy readings from the massive vessels. "Dr. Wright, look at this," he called out. Allison came over to his computer screen. "The ships are giving off a strange energy pattern. It pulses every 42 seconds. And look here." He pointed to a graph. "There's a weak spot right after each pulse." Allison studied the data. "This could be important. Send this to the military immediately." In a secure room nearby, satellite analyst Samantha Miller reviewed images of the alien fleet. She frowned at her screen. "These ships are positioned in a standard invasion formation," she told her supervisor. "It's exactly like the textbook examples, almost like they've never had to adapt to actual combat." Her supervisor looked confused. "How would you know what alien invasion tactics look like?" Samantha shrugged. "I don't. But this formation is vulnerable to attacks from below. No experienced commander would position their forces this way unless they weren't expecting resistance." The information from NASA and the satellite team reached General Dawson just as world leaders began an emergency video conference. Some wanted to surrender. Others demanded immediate attack. "We have 2 hours and 15 minutes left," General Dawson reminded them. "And we may have found weaknesses in their defenses." The president looked grim on the main screen. "General, you have authorization to deploy all experimental weapon systems. Do whatever it takes to protect our people." General Dawson turned to her team. "Activate Project Thunderbolt." Under the Nevada desert, massive hangar doors opened. Sleek aircraft with strange-looking weapons rolled out to the runway. These were the secret projects that had been developed over decades, hidden from public view. Lieutenant Summers stood before 20 elite pilots. "This is not a drill. We are going to test the aliens' defensive capabilities. Stay in formation and follow my lead." The pilots raced to their aircraft. Within minutes, they were airborne. Above Earth, the Veldorians began their preliminary scans. Small scout ships descended toward major cities. They moved slowly, confident in their superiority. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal watched the operation from his flagship. "Begin cataloging the local fauna. Their technology level appears to be early combustion era. No significant defenses detected." His second-in-command bowed. "Yes, Supreme Conqueror. Our scouts report primitive aircraft using fossil fuels. No energy weapons observed." In Montana, John Carter finished packing his truck with supplies and weapons. His neighbor, a local doctor named Greg Wilson, pulled into his driveway. "The military is setting up a defensive position at Miller's Ridge," Greg said. "They're asking for volunteers with combat experience." John nodded. "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Back at the Pentagon, Kevin Barnes's discovery about the energy pulses was being integrated into attack plans. Samantha Miller's analysis of the vulnerable formation helped map out approach vectors. Lieutenant Summers and his squadron approached the alien scout ships at high speed. They remained undetected thanks to stealth technology. "Weapons hot," Summers ordered over the radio. "Remember, we need to know what they can do. Hit and run only." The clock showed 1 hour and 45 minutes until the Veldorians' deadline. Humanity was not preparing to surrender. They were preparing to fight back. In his command ship, Supreme Conqueror Zixtal remained completely unaware of what was coming. Dr. Allison Wright worked quickly with computer scientist Daniel Rivera in a small lab at NASA. They had captured some of the alien signals and were trying to understand more about the Veldorian communication system. "Look at this pattern," Daniel said, pointing to his screen. "Their signals use quantum principles similar to our experimental systems, but there's something odd about them." Allison leaned closer. "They're not encrypted very well. It's like they never expected anyone to try to break into their communications. Daniel nodded. Exactly. If we can access their network, we might be able to cause confusion in their fleet. They worked together, typing fast and testing different approaches. After 30 minutes, they broke through. "We're in," Daniel shouted. "We can see all their communications now." Allison read the alien messages with growing excitement. "They're completely unprepared for us. According to this, their last major study of Earth was in the 1950s. They think we're still using propeller planes and early rockets." At MIT in Boston, Professor Lauren Green led a team of computer experts. They had been working on advanced cyber weapons for years. Now they had a real target. "Based on the data from NASA, I think we can create a virus that will attack their navigation systems," she told her team. "Their computers use quantum principles, but they're vulnerable to certain types of interference." Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she wrote the complex code. Her team worked around her, each person focused on a different part of the project. "This might be the most important code we ever write," she said quietly. In a biology lab in Atlanta, scientist Frank Rodriguez made a surprising discovery. He had been examining data from the Veldorian scout ships. Their environmental suits are designed to protect against radiation and certain gases, he told his colleagues, but they have no protection against Earth bacteria or viruses. They have no immunity to our world. He picked up his phone to call the Pentagon. "This could be important," he said. At NASA's Deep Space Listening Station in New Mexico, radio operators detected strange signals coming from far beyond the solar system. "There are more Veldorian ships out there," the chief operator reported to General Dawson. "But they're at least 3 months away. This first fleet is just the advance force." General Dawson took this news with a grim smile. "Then we need to send them a message about what happens to anyone who tries to invade Earth." Lieutenant Summers and his squadron had successfully engaged the first Veldorian scout ships. The alien vessels had been caught completely by surprise. 3 scout ships had been shot down, and the others had retreated back to the main fleet. "They have energy shields," Summers reported to the Pentagon, "but they're not very strong. And their weapons are powerful but slow to target. They weren't expecting us to fight back." Dr. Wright and Daniel Rivera continued to monitor the Veldorian communications. They could see growing confusion among the alien fleet. "Supreme Conqueror, the primitive vessels have attacked our scouts," one message read. "They possess technologies that were not in our survey data." Another message followed. "Request permission to activate full defensive systems." The Supreme Conqueror's reply showed his growing concern. "Permission granted. Prepare ground forces for immediate deployment rather than waiting for surrender. These creatures are more advanced than expected." Professor Green completed her virus and sent it to military computers around the world. "It's ready," she announced. "When uploaded to their systems, it will scramble their navigation controls. They won't be able to maintain their positions or target accurately." Frank Rodriguez's discovery about the aliens' biological vulnerability became part of the battle plan. The military prepared to use this weakness if the Veldorians try to land. The clock showed 1 hour and 15 minutes until the Veldorians' deadline. But humanity wasn't waiting. The counterattack had already begun. Lieutenant Eric Summers led his squadron high above the clouds. 20 of America's best pilots flew in tight formation. Their stealth jets were invisible to most radar systems on Earth. They were about to find out if they were also invisible to alien sensors. "Alpha Squadron, stay tight and follow my lead," Summers said into his radio. "Remember the plan. First pass is just to test their defenses. Don't get heroic." The pilots acknowledged his orders. They had trained for years for all kinds of scenarios, but never for this. Fighting actual aliens was something from movies, not real life. Yet here they were. The Veldorian fleet hung in the sky, massive ships that dwarfed anything humans had built. The aliens seemed confident, making no effort to hide or defend themselves. "They're sitting ducks," one pilot said. "Don't get cocky," Summers replied. "We don't know what they can do yet. The squadron approached from below, using the cloud cover. They armed their missiles, experimental weapons designed to penetrate advanced shielding. No one knew if they would work against alien technology. "Weapons hot. Fire on my mark," Summers ordered. The jets burst through the clouds, locking onto the nearest scout ships. Fire. 20 missiles streaked toward the alien vessels. The Veldorians reacted slowly, clearly caught by surprise. Their defense systems activated too late. Explosions bloomed against the hulls of the scout ships. 3 smaller vessels immediately lost control and began falling toward Earth. "Direct hits," a pilot shouted. "Pull away, pull away," Summers ordered. "Don't give them time to counterattack." The squadron dove back into the clouds as energy beams fired from the larger ships, missing them completely. In the Pentagon, General Dawson watched the successful attack on the main screen. She immediately picked up a secure phone. "This is General Dawson. Contact Moscow, Beijing, London, and Delhi. Tell them our weapons are effective. It's time for the coordinated response." Around the world, military forces that had been preparing for the past hour received the signal. Russian fighter jets took off from bases near Moscow. Chinese missile systems activated. European and Indian forces joined the attack. In NASA headquarters, Dr. Wright and Daniel Rivera had succeeded in their hacking attempt. They now had partial access to the Veldorian communication network. "Let's create some confusion," Daniel said with a smile. He began sending false orders to different ships in the fleet. Above Denver, Colorado, a large Veldorian ship opened its bay doors. Small transport craft emerged, carrying ground troops. This was the first landing attempt. The aliens had decided to skip the waiting period and begin colonization immediately. The transports descended toward a park outside the city. They expected no resistance. They were wrong. Army units were already in position. Air defense systems locked on, and just behind the military units, hundreds of armed civilians waited. Police officers, hunters, and ordinary people refusing to surrender their home. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal received confusing reports from all sectors. His ships were under attack worldwide. His communications were filled with contradictory orders he never gave. And now the first ground forces were reporting heavy resistance. "This is impossible," he said to his command staff. The survey data indicated they had no energy weapons, no global military coordination, and no cyber warfare capabilities. His second-in-command checked the survey data again. "Supreme Conqueror, the last detailed survey of this planet was conducted 70 Earth years ago." Zixtal slammed his 3-fingered hand on the control panel. "We are the Veldorian Empire. These primitives cannot stand against us." At that moment, Professor Green's virus was uploaded to the Veldorian fleet's central navigation system. Ship by ship, their controls began to fail. Some drifted out of position. Others turned randomly, accidentally firing on their own vessels. In Montana, John Carter and other local veterans watched as a damaged Veldorian scout ship crashed into a nearby field. They approached cautiously, weapons ready. "Let's see what these aliens really look like," John said. The clock showed just 50 minutes had passed since the aliens' ultimatum. Earth was not surrendering. Earth was winning. John Carter approached the crashed alien ship carefully. 5 other locals followed him, including Sheriff Diane Reed. They all had hunting rifles ready. "Stay behind me," John whispered. "We don't know what we're dealing with." The scout ship had dug a deep trench in the Montana soil before coming to rest against a hillside. Smoke rose from its damaged engines. The door on the side was partly open. Sheriff Reed pointed her rifle at the opening. "Movement inside," she said quietly. 2 figures stumbled out of the ship. They were about 5 feet tall with greenish-gray skin and large black eyes. They wore what looked like armor, but parts of it were damaged. One of them held some kind of weapon. John aimed his rifle. "Drop it," he shouted. The aliens looked at each other, confused. They didn't understand the language, but they understood the tone. The one with the weapon hesitated. Sheriff Reed fired a warning shot into the ground near their feet. Both aliens jumped in surprise. The armed one quickly dropped its weapon. "We need to secure that ship," John said. "There might be important information inside." The group approached carefully and led the aliens away from the ship. John and Sheriff Reed went inside while the others watched the prisoners. The ship's interior was filled with strange technology. Screens showed maps of Earth and what looked like battle plans. John found what seemed to be a computer system. "We need to get this to the military," he said. "This could help us fight them." At NASA, Dr. Wright received information about the captured scout ship in Montana. "Tell them to be careful," she warned over the phone. "We've learned the aliens have no immunity to our bacteria. But that also means we don't know how our bodies will react to them." Professor Green's virus had spread through the Veldorian fleet. Half of their ships were now drifting aimlessly or moving in random directions. The aliens could not coordinate their attacks. In Denver, the Veldorian ground forces were having an even worse time. As soon as they stepped out of their transport ships, they began experiencing problems. Their environmental suits were not designed to filter Earth's air completely. "Command, we are experiencing respiratory distress," one Veldorian soldier reported. "The atmosphere contains unknown biological elements." More than 30 alien soldiers collapsed within minutes of exposure to Earth's air. The common cold virus, harmless to humans, was devastating to their immune systems. The human military forces quickly surrounded the landing zone. The remaining Veldorian troops, sick and confused, surrendered without much resistance. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal watched in horror as his invasion force fell apart. Reports of defeats came in from all around the planet. His ships were either damaged or out of his control. His ground forces were sick or captured. "We must retreat and regroup," he ordered. "Recall all forces immediately." But it was too late. Professor Green's virus had locked most of the ship's navigation systems. They couldn't escape Earth's orbit. The Veldorian communications network, compromised by Dr. Wright and Daniel Rivera, was now filled with false orders and confusion. Some ships were firing on each other, unable to tell friend from foe. General Dawson received reports of the victories from around the world. Russian jets had destroyed 3 major ships over Moscow. Chinese missiles had disabled the Veldorian vessels above Beijing. European forces reported similar successes. "We need to strike at their command ship," she told her staff. "Cut off the head, and the body will fall." Lieutenant Summers received the order to lead an attack on the Veldorian flagship. His squadron, refueled and rearmed, took off again. In Montana, John Carter and Sheriff Reed had secured the alien scout ship. Military transport helicopters were on their way to collect the prisoners and the captured technology. "I can't believe it," Sheriff Reed said. "They came all this way to invade us, and they didn't even bother to check if we could fight back." John nodded. "That's the problem with bullies. They always underestimate their victims." Only 90 minutes had passed since the Veldorians had delivered their ultimatum. Their invasion was already falling apart. Lieutenant Eric Summers led a group of 20 Special Forces soldiers toward the Veldorian command ship. They flew in 4 stealth helicopters, staying below the alien ship's sensors. Thanks to Professor Green's virus, many of the ship's systems were malfunctioning, including its defenses. "Everyone check your oxygen tanks," Summers ordered. "Remember, we don't know what kind of air they breathe in there." The soldiers nodded, checking their equipment one last time. They wore experimental combat suits designed for space missions. No one had expected to use them against actual aliens. The helicopters approached the massive flagship from below. It hung in the sky above the Atlantic Ocean, bigger than an aircraft carrier. Its once smooth movements were now jerky and unstable as the navigation virus took effect. Dr. Wright watched their approach from NASA headquarters. She spoke to Summers through a secure line. "We've identified a maintenance entrance on the lower deck," she said. "According to the data from the scout ship, that area should have minimal security." "Copy that," Summers replied. "We're heading there now." Back at NASA, Dr. Wright had made another important discovery about the Veldorians. Their command structure is completely rigid, she explained to General Dawson over video. Lower ranks cannot act without direct orders from above. If we capture or isolate their leader, the entire invasion force will be unable to function properly. That's why we're going after this Supreme Conqueror, General Dawson replied. Cut off the head, and the body dies. On the Veldorian flagship, Supreme Conqueror Zixtal was growing desperate. Most of his fleet was disabled or destroyed. His ground forces were either captured or dying from Earth diseases. His communication system was compromised. And now his flagship's systems were failing too. How is this possible? He demanded of his officers. How could primitives do this to the mighty Veldorian Empire? His second-in-command showed him updated scans of Earth's military capabilities. Supreme Conqueror, it appears our intelligence was severely outdated. The humans have advanced significantly since our last survey. Zixtal pounded his control panel in anger. We are still Veldorians. We do not surrender to lesser species. At that moment, alarms blared throughout the ship. Security breach in lower maintenance sector, a computerized voice announced. Lieutenant Summers and his team had successfully entered the flagship. They moved quickly through the alien corridors, following the ship layout they had studied from the captured scout ship's data. Remember, stun weapons only, Summers reminded his team. We want prisoners, not bodies. The Veldorian crew was not prepared for intruders. Many of them had never seen actual combat. They had expected an easy conquest of a primitive world. Instead, they faced highly trained human soldiers who moved with deadly precision. One by one, sections of the ship fell into human hands. Lieutenant Summers led his team directly toward the command center, following Dr. Wright's directions. Meanwhile, John Carter and Sheriff Reed had another plan. Using information from the captured scout ship, they had figured out how to pilot one of the smaller Veldorian vessels. With a team of engineers from the nearby Air Force Base, they had repaired the ship enough to make it fly. This is crazy, Sheriff Reed said as they rose into the air. I never thought I'd be flying an alien spaceship. John adjusted the strange controls. The best way to catch them by surprise is to use their own technology against them. Their captured ship approached the Veldorian flagship from above. Because it broadcast Veldorian identification codes, the flagship's remaining security systems ignored it. Inside the flagship, Lieutenant Summers and his team reached the entrance to the command center. They placed breaching charges on the door. On my mark, Summers said. 3, 2, 1. The door blew open. The soldiers rushed in, weapons ready. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal turned in shock as humans entered his command center. This was impossible. Inconceivable. No species had ever boarded a Veldorian flagship in the Empire's history. Yet here they were, the primitive humans, pointing their weapons directly at him. Just 2 hours after delivering his ultimatum to Earth, Supreme Conqueror Zixtal faced a reality he had never imagined. Defeat. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal stood frozen as Lieutenant Summers and his team surrounded him. The human soldiers had their weapons pointed at every Veldorian officer in the command center. Supreme Conqueror Zixtal, you are now a prisoner of Earth, Summers announced. Your invasion has failed. The alien leader could not believe what was happening. His 3-fingered hands shook with rage and disbelief. This is impossible, he said in his own language. We are the Veldorian Empire. We have conquered 12 worlds. We cannot be defeated by primitives. A translator device that Dr. Wright had programmed based on the aliens' communications converted his words to English. The device also translated Summers' reply back to the alien language. Well, you picked the wrong planet to invade, Summers said. At that moment, John Carter and Sheriff Reed arrived at the command center, coming through a different entrance. They had successfully navigated the captured scout ship to the flagship and entered through a secondary airlock. Looks like we're late to the party, John said, seeing that Summers' team had already secured the room. The remaining Veldorian ships tried to flee Earth's orbit, but Professor Green's virus had infected their entire network. Most ships could barely control their direction, much less escape Earth's gravity. "Your fleet is disabled," Summers told Zixtal. "Your ground forces have surrendered. Your invasion is over." Zixtal was taken to a secure communication room where Dr. Wright waited on a video screen. She had been working with linguists to improve their translation abilities. "Why did you think Earth would be an easy target?" she asked the captured alien leader. Zixtal, now understanding the magnitude of his failure, answered truthfully. "Our last major survey of your planet was during your 1950s era. Our data showed primitive rockets, simple aircraft, and basic radio communications. There was no indication you had advanced so quickly." Dr. Wright nodded. "You underestimated humanity's rate of progress. We've gone from basic flight to space exploration in just over a century." General Dawson joined the video call. "Supreme Conqueror, you will order all your remaining forces to stand down immediately. Then we will discuss the terms of your surrender." Zixtal had no choice. He sent the command, and across Earth, the remaining Veldorian forces laid down their weapons. In the Pentagon's main control room, military leaders from around the world watched as the invasion officially ended. Cheers erupted when the last Veldorian ship powered down its weapons. 3 hours, General Dawson said, looking at the clock. "They gave us an ultimatum of 3 hours, and we defeated them in exactly that time." Scientists began examining the captured alien technology. The ships contained advanced propulsion systems, energy weapons, and medical technology beyond anything humans had developed. "This will advance our science by decades," Kevin Barnes said as he studied the alien engines. Professor Green had already started analyzing the Veldorian computer systems. "Their quantum computing is impressive, but their security is terrible. They never expected anyone to hack their systems." 1 week after the failed invasion, Dr. Wright met with world leaders to discuss what they had learned from the captured aliens and their technology. "The Veldorians are part of a larger galactic community," she explained. "There are many other species out there. Some might be friendly, others not. But thanks to the technology we've captured, we'll be ready for whatever comes next." In Montana, John Carter returned to his cabin. He sat on his porch with Sheriff Reed, looking up at the stars. "They'll tell others about us now," he said. "Word will spread that Earth isn't an easy target." Sheriff Reed nodded. 3 hours, that's all it took to send them running. John smiled. "Imagine if they'd given us a whole day to prepare." Across the world, humans looked up at the night sky with new understanding. They were not alone in the universe, but they had proven something important. Humanity was not to be underestimated. The story of how aliens attempted to colonize Earth and lasted only 3 hours would be told for generations to come.